This is Mike Corey from ESPN, and you're listening to the Sports Objective Podcast, the unofficial podcast of the Pirates.
Yeah. My heart is purple and gold. I'm a pirate down of my soul, and I don't back down, not at all. Find out when the cannons explode. From the sidelines down to the post, put it down like not even close. All out to my last whistle blow. From the flag with the soul and crossbones. Everybody stand up, get your hands.
What is going on, Pirate Nation, and anyone else who may be tuned in? Welcome in to the Sports Objective. We appreciate you tuning in, whether it's right now on YouTube and Facebook or pretty much anywhere podcasts are found, you can find us. I'm joined by Matt Semenza, and here in just a moment, Matt and I are going to be taking a look at the East Carolina running backs and tight ends. But before we do that, Matt, how are things up in Connecticut this afternoon?
Just a typical day in Connecticut, Bubba. Freezing rain. You got to love the Northeast. You never get the sun or warm weather this time of year. So I'm jealous of you guys down south. But we are talking Pirate football, so that's a good thing, and looking forward to breaking down our action tight day.
Yeah, I know a few days ago you were saying how nice it was up there with the weather, and now it's back to freezing rain. So it's kind of like our weather here in North Carolina. And back several weeks ago, one day it would be 35 or 40, and then the next day it would be 75.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely get some huge fluctuations in the Northeast this time of year, but for the most part, it's under 50 degrees. So just looking forward to some warm weather. We got to move down to North Carolina one of these days, and be with you guys down there in the sun.
Yeah, and speaking of being in the sun, hopefully we'll have excellent weather this weekend. We're less than 48 hours away from the Great Pirate Purple Gold Pigskin Pig Out Party. I know it may not officially go by that name, but it's the Pirate Purple Gold Pigskin Pig Out, and it's getting back to being, much more like what it has historically been. Obviously, the last couple years, on one year we didn't have it. Last year it was just the game itself. None of the events going on in conjunction with the Purple Gold Pigskin Pig Out. You didn't have the parade of pigs and the pig cooking and all of that going on. So that was a really bare bones event a year ago. But at least they did have a spring game. But really looking forward to getting the spring game back in much more of its glory, if you will, this year. And really looking forward to seeing what Mason Garcia and some of those pieces to the puzzle for future years. And this year as well, providing depth, seeing how those guys can perform.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I wish I could see it in person, but definitely there's some intriguing storylines here. Garcia is definitely a guy that you want to see, and I know for sure he got increased reps this spring, and you want to see him get to the next step in his development. I think it's been a long road for him. I think that, learning the system and the scheme has not always been easy at times, but there's no doubt he's got the physical tools to be successful at this level. I think another year of playing behind Holton is going to help him. And hopefully he takes the next step and shows up here in the spring game and has a big day.
Within the last day or so, Matt, when we took a look at Steve Shankweiler's offensive line, a unit that's made tremendous strides since this staff took over in December 2018. It was a glaring weakness when they took over, and now it's Coach Houston went as far as to say that it could be a strength, if not, or maybe the strength of the football team. So we shall see. But when you have an offensive line that's steadily improving like we do, that allows for the running game to be what Coach Houston and this staff want it to be. And, man, do we have a stable of running backs, a couple of tremendous backs, a couple of guys who, pretty much any team in this conference would love to have on their roster. And let's start off with Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell out of Georgia, just the first thing you think of when you think of Keaton Mitchell was just instant offense. And he can take it the distance on any given play. And you saw that immediately last year in that App State game when he caught the screen pass and took it down the left sideline. But, last year, Keaton Mitchell, 5'9", 188. And like I said, out of Eagles Landing Christian down in Georgia, Keaton ran for 1,132 yards on 174 attempts, 6.5 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns. Also had that one receiving touchdown that I mentioned. And the thing that jumped out about Keaton Mitchell's 10 touchdowns is that 5 of those 10 went at least 57 yards or more. And then 8 of the 10 were at least 24 yards or more.
That's an incredible stat. It reminds you a little bit of Chris Johnson with the home run hitting speed. I mean, he's definitely, like you said, the first thing you think about Mitchell is that he's got that game-breaking speed, and he can take it to the house. If you just give him a little crack or a seam, he can take it. So, I also, what jumps out to me is 6.5 yards per carry. I mean, that's a phenomenal number right there. And, you can win a lot of games with that number. I think that his emergence last year, in conjunction with Rajay, you have two outstanding backs, in my opinion, both all-conference caliber guys that can be relied on. So really looking forward to, big things this year from Keaton Mitchell. I do think we can continue to find more creative ways even to get him the ball now that we have a little more depth running back here with Pop McKay. So maybe now you can find some ways to utilize Keaton even more. Maybe get him the ball a little more in the passing game, put him in the slot a little bit and try and get a ball on jet sweeps and reverses and just utilize his speed any way possible. But if he can maintain that yards per carry average over 6 yards, that's a great thing for ECU.
Yeah, and before we dive into what you were just referencing as far as using Keaton Mitchell in a variety of ways, and I know that's something that Donnie Kirkpatrick and this offensive staff clearly want to do, and we'll discuss that more in a moment. But you talk about them being Keaton Mitchell and Rajay Harris and the way they catch the ball out of the backfield. And between the two of them, they've had, I think, right around 65 career receptions, between 30 and 35 apiece. So that really stands out. I talk about Keaton taking the screen pass against App State, 63 yards for a touchdown a season ago. So you have some nice versatility there. And then in the ground game, as a freshman, Rajay averaged nearly 5 yards per carry. He hit an 80-yard home run against Navy, also took one about 45 yards against South Florida down in Tampa. So 128 carries, 624 yards, and 4.9 per, and 4 touchdowns for Rajay back in 2020. Last year, it was 165 carries for 583 yards, 3.5 yards per carry, a number you would certainly like to see go up. I know Coach Houston here recently, after maybe it was the second scrimmage or one of the recent practices after the second scrimmage, Coach Houston said that he felt as though Rajay, even though he had a good season, was not what he could have been. He felt as though he was pressing a little bit and feels like he is much more himself this spring like he was in the fall of 2020. But again, so you think about it, Rajay Harris, between his 2 seasons in 20 and 21, has nearly 300 carries. And then Keaton Mitchell has, 174 last year and 88 as a freshman. So that's right there. You think about the two of them, they have well over 500 carries.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And when I look at those two guys, I don't see a number 1 and a number 2. I really see 2 number 1s. I think they're different in their approach and their game is different. But and you look at Rajay. Last year, his yards per carry average did slip. But watching the games, there were so many times where he was literally hitting the field just as he was getting the ball in his hands. So I feel like, some of that is, maybe production on his end, but a lot of it was he was getting hit in the backfield, before he even get ahead of steam. So I still see those guys as 2 number 1s. I think Rajay is going to have a huge year. I think you'll see him go well north of 4 yards per carry again, and kind of get himself, back on track. I think, but both of those guys will help share the load and carry the load for this team, and can both do some good things. And what I really like about them both is that they can catch the ball out of the backfield, and make plays in the passing game too. So I think that when you look at our offense, the one area where you'd really like to see some more improvement is in the screen game. You'd like to see us utilize that more. You mentioned the play against App State where Keaton took one to the house. I'd like to see more of that this year. I'd really like to see those guys utilized heavily in the passing game, and just try to take advantage of their playmaking ability. So, and I do think we will see that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we will as well. And when we're just off the top of my head, when we saw screen passes during the 2021 season, that was that running back screen that you referenced. That was kind of like a swing pass, and that's more of the screen it seems as though we saw as opposed to a middle screen. And I'm sure there was good reason for that. But not dissecting the film the way the coaches do. Can't really shed much light there, but I do recall the disastrous play. I hate to bring it back up. It was such a turning point in that ball game against South Carolina when we did throw a middle screen to running back. It was Rajay, and kind of hit off his breastplate on his shoulder pads, if you will, and ricocheted up in the air and turned into a South Carolina touchdown.
Yeah, that's a bad memory. That play changed the complexion of that game. What a disaster that was. It did seem like we weren't entirely comfortable in the screen game, throughout the course of the season, and that was definitely a disaster. But it's something we can get better from. I do think it needs to continue to be a bigger part of the offense. And another thing I'd really like to see is Rajay and Keaton on the field more together. And I think you can do a lot of creative things by moving Keaton into the slot. Or like I mentioned earlier, not to be repetitive, but you get him on jet sweep action. And by having Rajay in the backfield, you have two guys on the field at the same time that can get touches. I also like to see Keaton in the slot, in particular against like two deep coverage where we can use his speed vertically, and really try to, stretch the field and stretch out defenses, and put stress on the free safety, specifically against two deep coverage, having, Keaton and maybe like a Josiah Hatfield on the field together, and run vertical routes. So I think there's different things we can continue to do. I think it's, but it is a process. It's an evolution, and I'm sure Donnie Kirkpatrick is drawing up late and trying to find ways to utilize them.
Yeah, Matt, you read my mind as far as lining Keaton Mitchell up in the slot. Be it a 2x2 set or maybe even an empty set. Handing the ball to him on a jet sweep. If you do it where you do have a back in the backfield, just think about the pressure that puts on the perimeter. The threat of handing the ball off to Keaton Mitchell on a jet sweep, and the way he can take it the distance in a heartbeat, with his home run hitting ability, and faking that and then handing up inside on the inside zone and so forth to Rajay Harris or Pop McKay even. But also putting him there in the slot, throwing a bubble screen to him. There's so many good things that seem like could come, so much flexibility from having Keaton Mitchell and Rajay Harris on the field at the same time. And then also, when they are in the backfield, a lot of times, and Matt, you may not remember this play, but think back to Ruffin McNeil's first season. It was fairly late in the season, maybe game 9 or 10. We were playing down at UAB. Very solid backs that we had in Jonathan Williams, and Dominique Davis faked an outside run to Jonathan Williams and then rolled to his right, and then he threw back to the faker, or, the person he just faked to, and hit Jonathan Williams down the sideline, on what amounted to a wheel route. So doing something like that, faking an outside zone play to either Keaton or Rajay and then hitting them on a wheel route, maybe we'll see that in the playbook as well.
Yeah, I definitely think both of those guys can be really effective like that. And I think the other thing, too, that's very different from last year is that we didn't have number 3 running back. And this year you have Pop McKay now, who all of a sudden is, now all of a sudden in his second year, he knows the system. So the reason why that changes it so much is because last year, you were afraid that if Rajay went down or if Keaton went down, you were going to have a lack of depth. And I think this year, because you do have a true number 3, now you don't have to be as concerned about, the number of carries per game or just overutilization, because you have that true number 3. And then you also have 2 young guys coming in Gunn and Squire, that were recruited by the staff. So that added depth, I think, gives the coaching staff a little more flexibility in the way they can use them, but also the utilization from like a number of carries and touches per game.
Yeah, as far as Joseph Pop McKay is concerned, redshirt freshman, 6 feet, 210 pounds or so. At least that was his height and weight the last time the ECUPirates.com roster was updated out of Phoenix City, Alabama. 4 carries for 14 yards a season ago. I think a lot of those 4 carries and came in the game against Temple, if I'm not mistaken, maybe. But Pop McKay, you certainly saw nice looking back with him. And this spring, we talk about guys developing. We talk about how much the offensive line has improved with even 3 or 4 guys that are going to be significant contributors, whether it's starters or reserves playing significant snaps on that offensive line, playing behind that second team offensive line. It seems as though Pop McKay in one of the scrimmages ran for about 80 or 85 yards on 15 attempts.
That's great news, and throughout the course of the year, we're gonna need his production. I think he's gonna have plenty of opportunities to carry the ball this year. There's definitely room to go around for 3 running backs to be utilized. So, obviously Rodney and Keaton are going to be the guys that get the most carries, but I think there's going to be a role for him too. Bottom line is, if you have playmakers, you find a way to get them on the field and find a way to get a ball. So, looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Something else that was a shame about Pop McKay is that Coach Houston, when we were getting ready to play Boston College in the bowl game up in Annapolis, he said that Pop McKay, the younger guys get a significant amount of reps during those bowl practices, which is like a second spring practice. And Pop McKay was looking just better than he's looked all year, far and away. And Coach Houston was really extremely proud of the growth he had shown and anticipated him getting some snaps in that Military Bowl, and unfortunately that didn't happen. But really excited to see Pop McKay and his development and seeing him get on the field and get some significant action in 2022. Also in the running back room, you have Nemo Squire. I believe Nemo's already on campus. He was a mid-year enrollee. He's much more of the mold of Keaton Mitchell. He's shorter than Keaton. Nemo's 5'6", but 189 pounds, so right around that size of Keaton Mitchell, but a couple inches shorter. Out of Darlington, South Carolina, Dillon High School. Very excited about Nemo Squire, both as a football player, but tremendous asset to the locker room. We had him on our recruiting breakdown show, if you will, Crew 22, back a few months ago when everything was taking place back in mid-December. And Nemo Squire was an excellent communicator, and people in that Darlington, South Carolina, Dillon High School area, really just raved about Nemo Squire and everything he brings to the table. But also have Marlon Gunn, tremendous back out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, coming in. And then you also have, I believe it would be a walk-on from Myers Park High School in Charlotte. and forgive me if I mispronounce this name, but it looks like Kadarin Redfern, 5'10", 190 pounds.
And so you really like the depth that's building, and I agree with you on Nemo Squire. First, I really enjoyed interviewing him. He's got a great personality, really likable guy. And if I'm not mistaken, he ran for over 4,000 yards in high school. Correct me, I want to make sure I'm getting that right, but if I recall, he
I
ran
believe
for over
that I believe
4,000.
that's correct, Matt. I'm not 100% on that, but yes, whatever his numbers were, they were very eye-popping numbers that he put up down in Darlington, South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty amazing statistic. You don't see very often somebody putting up those kind of numbers in high school. But like you said, a shorter guy, but really can make you miss. He's shifty. I loved his tape. I really did. So great pickup there. And then Marlon Gunn, same thing. Another guy who had some good offers, good speed. He's got a little more power, I think. Just a lot of upside. So when you look at the room, if Keaton Mitchell is to have another year like he did last year, considering the fact that he's a legit 4.3 40 guy, he could easily, and I don't want to get too far ahead of the game, but he could make a move possibly to go into the draft next year. And then now all of a sudden you have to have quality guys ready to go behind him. So I like what the staff is doing. I think these are really good pickups, and I think that you're going to see, another year of production in that room.
No doubt about it, and it will be very interesting to see, exactly how many snaps Pop McKay ends up getting, given the two proven commodities. But like you said, you definitely cannot have too much depth over the course of a season. We were very fortunate last year that Rajay Harris and Keaton Mitchell stayed healthy and did not have to miss any time from what I recall. And another aspect that I wanted to mention about those two guys and Harris and Mitchell that is absolutely awesome that you love to see out of your skill guys is they hang on to the football. They do not put the football on the ground.
No, and that's a great point. That is a great point. And that's the first thing that'll get you benched as a running back when you put the football on the ground. And those guys, they've clearly been coached up on ball security. So that's another great asset about them. And, I think one area you can always get better at a running back is in pass protection. So I expect those guys to take the next jump there as well. But, I think when you look at an all-around back, it's not just the yards per carry. It's, do you protect the football? Can you block? Can you protect? So, you want to see those guys take the next step. In particular, Rajay, I love his ability to run in between the tackles. He has a unique ability to run the ball inside and fight forward for extra yards. He's very shifty, in between the tackles, and very effective inside runner. So you like it's a little bit of fire and ice.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Matt, before we shift over and talk about the tight ends, because that's another room that has a tremendous amount of talent and has just grown leaps and bounds from where they've been in recent seasons, and that was a point of emphasis, much like the offensive lines, upon Coach Houston and this staff taking over back in December of 2018. Pirate fans, make sure you are joining the Pirate Club, 252-737-4540, or simply go to ecupirateclub.com. You can give them a call. Again, 252-737-4540. You can join for as little as $100. And if you're a young grad, maybe you're a young grad listening to our show, if you're the first year out of school, you can join the Pirate Club for free and receive $250 worth of credits. You'll receive everything that comes with that $250 level of the Pirate Club. So make sure that you're doing just that. If you love the Pirates, then we need you in the Pirate Club, 252-737-4540 or ecupirateclub.com. Also, season tickets. Back 10 to 12 years ago, Matt, we were selling 23,000 season tickets. And right around 18 to 20 at least every year. The last several years, we've seen that slide with the lack of success on the field, as well as some other factors. So let's make sure that we're ordering those season tickets, Pirate fans. We're somewhere between 10 and 10,500 now for 2022. Last year we finished at 14,100, somewhere in that neighborhood. It would be nice to get that up to 17 or 18,000 in 2022. And then last but certainly not least, before we talk about the tight end, here's a word from Next Level Training Center.
For more than a decade, Next Level Training Center, located at 1750 Wimbledon Drive. For more than a decade, Next Level Training Center, located at 1750 Wimbledon Drive in Greenville, has been Eastern North Carolina's premier baseball and softball training facility. With over 30,000 square feet of space, members can get infield work, pitching, and catching work, improve their strength, speed, and agility, and take live swings in one of the many full-size cages. You will receive top-level instruction from Next Level Training Center's first-class staff, featuring owner Trent Britt and a variety of former college and professional players, all while enjoying some of the best facilities in the state. Economical options, customer-friendly hours, and a staff that prides itself on serving. Visit nextleveltc.com or call 252-756-NEXT. Again, that's 252-756-NEXT.
There you have some words about Next Level Training Center of Greenville. Again, nextleveltc.com, or you can give them a call at 252-756-NEXT. To certainly appreciate their support of the program. And transitioning now over to the tight ends, that's a position group that has seen a tremendous increase in production and just the amount of talent in that room in the last couple seasons. Obviously, you had Shane Calhoun come onto the scene prior to the 2020 campaign. You saw it in a very small dose. Shane Calhoun, I think, had 5 or 6 catches, but you saw enough to see what he was capable of. And with that happening, you were really excited about what he would do if you got the ball in his hands more frequently. And that happened last year. He had the breakout game up at Marshall, having 18 or 19 catches on the season, with I think it was 9 of those coming against the Thundering Herd. So tremendous performance by Shane Calhoun. And then you obviously had Ryan Jones. You saw a little production early in the season, but that second half of the year, he really came into his own and put up the best numbers by a Pirate tight end since way back in 2015 by Bryce Williams, when Bryce had nearly 60 receptions.
Yeah, you really like the production we got out of the tight end position last year, and I think it's going to be another huge season for the in the tight end room. I would not be surprised at all if Ryan Jones is our receptions leader at the end of the year. I think things were really trending that way towards the end of the season last year. And Bubba, I always go back to when Mike Houston and Donnie Kirkpatrick first got here. They talked about how they wanted to really utilize the tight end position, and similar to like we talked about with the O-line. On our O-line preview, when they got here, there really wasn't much to work with in that room. And I recall when James Madison came to Dowdy Ficklin several years ago with Mike Houston as the head coach, they used the tight end very effectively against us. So you really knew it was just a matter of time. They had to get their personnel in and get comfortable with the personnel and get to a point where we could really, be productive at that position. So now all of a sudden you have 2 guys that you love their talent. They now have experience. And I think, Bubba, I mean, you tell me, I think we're going to see a lot of two tight end sets this year.
Yeah, I really think we will. A lot of 12 personnel, as you call it. So, a single back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. I really think we will see a lot of 12 personnel, and you have that 12 personnel grouping. I mean, just because it's 12 personnel, you have a variety of formations, and when within that personnel grouping, or that you can line up in with that personnel grouping. And so, very interested to see both Calhoun and Jones can line up in the slot, and we'll definitely see them align in a variety of ways. And then we'll see some 3 tight end sets as well. I feel certain, be it short yardage or goal line situations where you'll also have Aaron Jarman or another tight end thrown into the mix. But so many options there. Ryan Jones, last year, he really became that reliable go-to option during the second half of the season. I just think back to the final 3 games alone, at Memphis, at Navy, and then Cincinnati. How much Holton was looking his way and Tyler Snead's way in those 3rd and 4th down short yardage situations. A tight end can be a quarterback's best friend.
Yeah, you could tell that as the season went on, Holton and Ryan Jones really found a good rhythm, in the passing game, and they improved as the season went on. And the thing about Jones that I like is he's a really versatile guy. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have talked about his athleticism, and he has speed, and he's agile for a big man. But what I like about him is like you said, you can split him out, you could put him in the slot. You could do some things with him, as a detached tight end, similar like what we used to do with Bryce Williams, where we would split him out like a wide receiver and get him matched up on a smaller corner and throw fade routes, and jump balls. So I think you'll see things like that this year. And, and if you recall, Bubba, towards I think it was maybe the second to last game, we used Ryan Jones on some jet sweeps. I mean, how often do you see a tight end in college football get the ball on a jet sweep? So it says a lot about his athleticism, and the coaches want to get him the ball.
Exactly, that's an excellent point as far as the jet sweeps that Ryan Jones got the ball on. Certainly speaks to his athleticism, and as far as that athleticism, like you're saying, Bryce Williams, he had that size that created mismatches. Ryan Jones is, he's got nice size for sure, but some excellent athleticism to create those mismatches on linebackers. And you saw it a year ago, and I think his longest reception was somewhere between 35 and 40 yards. I bet he surpasses that this year, and I really, really think he's going to make a whole lot of plays. And with some of the uncertainties, that we have with our receiving core, some talent in that room, but a lot of it is largely unproven. It's nice to have guys like Jones and Calhoun that are so reliable, and that's one of the reasons that we certainly expect to see even more 12 personnel sets and formations this go around.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think where those guys can also take the next step is in the blocking game. Their ability to block in the run game, and Ryan Jones had played defense for several years, so he was kind of getting back into the swing, early in the season, getting back into the swing of things offensively. And I'm sure he was learning a lot in terms of blocking as well. And same thing for Shane Calhoun. So hopefully they'll be better blockers this year as well. And they can really have a well-rounded game as a tight end.
And one of those things about Ryan Jones' development, having been a former linebacker, that certainly benefited him, knowing exactly what a defense is seeking to do, but having a better understanding of where the soft spots and particular coverages are. But even with that being the case, him transitioning to a new position, and then going through everything he went through last year, after having to sit out the previous season to complete his academic requirements at OU, that was certainly responsible for him really developing later in the year as opposed to earlier in the year. But 37 receptions for 442 yards, right at 12 yards per catch, 5 touchdowns, and like I said, a long of 38. And then Shane Calhoun, 6'2", 243, from St. Augustine, Florida, 18 catches, 190 yards, 10.5 per reception, 2 touchdowns, and a long of 32. And then, like I mentioned, back in 2020, he had 5 grabs for 83 yards when he started 7 out of the 9 games. But, you combine those numbers and just tremendous production, 55 catches for about 630 yards. And that's far and away the most production since 2015. Like I mentioned, prior to that, I mean, I really don't think you'd had an individual tight end have more than 11 or 12 catches, and the tight end room as a whole had not surpassed more than about 25 or 30 over the previous 5 seasons. In addition to Jones and Calhoun, want to mention some of the other guys in that room. You have Jacob Coleman out of Chesterfield, Virginia, 6'4", 212 pounds, a redshirt freshman. You also have, who I had already mentioned, Eastern North Carolina native, from Kinston, North Carolina. Obviously, grad student now. Aaron Jarman, 6'6", 263. He had a few targets, not many, but I think 2 or 3 a year ago. And both of those, or all 3 of those, were down in the red zone. So hopefully we'll be able to get Aaron involved this year, at least in some of those situations where the defense is expecting other guys to get the ball and, maybe slip Aaron out into the flat or something and catch the defense a little unsuspecting. And then another addition to that room, actually a couple. You had D'Angelo McKinney, who began his Pirate career as a defensive lineman out of Kenansville, North Carolina, Southwest Onslow High School, 6'4", 288 pounds. And then last but certainly not least, I believe the only other one in the tight end room right now, prior to the summer, is Tyler Savage, a former wide receiver, and he's going to be used in a variety of ways because, Tyler, 6'3", 226, is a larger, or was a larger receiver, and now you take someone that may have been, and his book was certainly not written at receiver because he was very early in his career, but who knows? Let's say he was an average receiver or would have been an average receiver. He may have a chance to be an above average tight end because of some of the mismatches he'll be able to create. So very interested to keep an eye on that. And I think we'll see some production from Tyler Savage, the Virginia native, after moving over from Whiteout.
That's a great point. I had forgot that he moved down to the tight end room, and he's, when you saw him at receiver last year, you love the size. I mean, he's a big body out there, but yeah, he looks more like a tight end, and I think long term his best position is, even if it's not a traditional tight end position, it's more of a detached tight end where he lines up in the slot quite a bit. You get him matched up on linebackers, and you kind of utilize him in that way. So I like what he can bring to that room there, and I think that's going to be a good move for him. And I also want to mention Jarman. Jarman is a guy that another really big body. And he's going to be used heavily in red zone packages, short yardage. I can anticipate some situations where we have 3 tight ends on the field at once, 12 personnel, and then maybe use Jarman as sort of a H-back, in the backfield to give the extra blocking. So there's a lot of different options you can go to now that we have 3 or 4 guys that they have the ability, and they're also experienced now in the system. So a lot of let's face it, Donnie K has a lot more weapons now at his disposal than he did 2 years ago. That's for sure.
No doubt about that. And I think as the season goes on, I mentioned the combined 55 catches by Calhoun and Jones in 2021. I don't think it's far-fetched at all with the increased use of those 12 personnel packages and formations. I could certainly see them combining for something like 70 receptions in 2022. We shall see.
I could absolutely see that. I think Ryan Jones, he'll probably have 50 at least, when it's all said and done. So there's going to be a very productive room, and excited for those other guys too. I mean, like you mentioned on Jarman, he could be a great decoy. Coming out and maybe leak out into the flats or use him in the red zone. So exciting to see the development here. Seems like that's the theme, Bubba, with so far with all of the positional breakdowns we've done, starting with the O-line, then looking at the running backs, and now the tight ends. When you really look at it group by group, we have so much more depth than we had even a year ago, and it's exciting to see that.
Yeah, certainly. And, you look at Ryan Jones. I go back to last season. I talk about 37 catches for 442 yards. That was with only having one catch in the first 4 games. He had one catch for a 38-yard touchdown late in that game against App State. No catches against South Carolina Marshall or Charleston Southern. And then he really came into his own with 6 catches for 58 yards and a touchdown against Tulane. And, from that point on, went 4, 4, 2, 6, 4, 5, 5. So pretty remarkable when you factor in that 36 of those 37 catches came in the final 8 ball games.
That's a great point. I forgot about that. And I remember thinking at that time, early in the season, like, wow, this is going to be another year in the tight end room where we don't have any production. It kind of looked like that first 4 games. And then all of a sudden, he just kind of exploded. He came out of nowhere and really picked it up for the second half of the season. So, he's going to continue that. He's going to have a great year. And excited to see what the rest of the guys can do as well.
So with that 4.5 catch number over those final 8 games, if he had that type of production this season, then that would obviously equate to 55 catches. So I don't think your number of 50 is far-fetched in the slightest.
Yeah, no, you could definitely see that the possibility of that happening. So we shall see. But he's a guy, when you look at the weapons we have offensively, we talked about Keaton and Rajay, and obviously Ryan Jones he's another guy that you just want to get him touches. You want to get the ball in his hands and let him be a factor. So that's really the challenge for Donnie K, to make sure that these that our most talented players get the ball and they get several touches a game where they can make plays.
Pirate Nation, we certainly here on the Sports Objective, we appreciate the support of Next Level Training Center and Trenton Gaynell Britt do an excellent job. They have an unbelievable staff, and they are Eastern North Carolina's premier baseball and softball training facility. Check them out today by going to nextleveltc.com or by simply calling them at 252-756-NEXT. Again, 252-756-NEXT. Well, Matt, that will do it for this edition of the show. We broke down the running backs, also the tight ends. A couple weeks ago, we took a look at the secondary. Also took a look yesterday at the offensive line. I encourage our listeners to go back and check that out. And that was about a 35 to 40-minute breakdown of the offensive line position group that's certainly made tremendous strides and will continue to do so under Coach Shank. But, in the coming days, we'll take a look at the quarterbacks, also the wide receivers, linebackers, defensive line, and then also the specialists. We still have a lot to take a look at over the next week or two as spring ball wraps up on Saturday with the Purple Gold Pigskin Pig Out. The game will begin or kick off, even though that is not a live kickoff. It will kick off at 12:30 at Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium. The game generally moves pretty quickly because it's a running clock with the exception of the final 2 minutes of each half. So by 1:45 or 2 o'clock, the game will be in the books. And then you have softball against Houston at 3 o'clock, and then baseball against the Wichita State Shockers at 4 o'clock. You also have Pirate Fest going on, and plenty of ways to be entertained if you're a Pirate fan, and specifically there in Eastern North Carolina. But I know we'll have folks coming down from Tidewater, from the Charlotte area, and all parts of the West. So definitely get out. From everything we're hearing, it's going to be excellent weather and a lot of fun supporting the Pirates. But until next time, for Matt Semenza and everyone here at the Sports Objective, I'm Bubba Rosenbaum, and you have been, again, watching and listening to the Sports Objective. Follow us on social media, on Twitter and TikTok at TheSportsOBJ, on Instagram at The Sports Objective. Like and follow us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, we appreciate you watching and listening. And as always, go Pirates.